anything away from anybody else. So there was this kind of firm belief that I was walking this path and I had a purpose, and didn't know exactly where I was going to end up or what exactly that might have been. But
I'm not doing anything that's going to compromise my peace and happiness.
Period.
So I think just taking control, making sure you like maintain your power, don't give your power away to anybody. That I feel like is the key to like truly being happy in or out of it.
Ever try to fit in when God has clearly created you to stand out? Always be a lady. And understand you are the prize.
Something about this moment feels different. When something significant happens to Michael B. Jordan, people don't just celebrate it. They watch everything surrounding it. This time, the spotlight didn't stay on him alone. It gradually shifted toward Lori Harvey and Marjorie Harvey. Not because they said anything loud or dramatic, but because even the smallest reaction, real or perceived, suddenly became part of the story. That's what made this moment feel bigger than a simple career win. It felt like the past and present were colliding in real time, and the internet couldn't look away. At first, everything seemed simple. Michael B. Jordan was having his moment, the kind that reflects growth, consistency, and years of effort finally coming together. People were celebrating him, praising his discipline, and highlighting how far he's come. It felt like one of those rare moments when the conversation is purely positive, when everyone seems to agree that someone truly deserves the recognition they're receiving. But in today's digital world, moments like that rarely remain untouched for long. As quickly as people begin celebrating, they also begin remembering. And that's exactly what happened here. Slowly, almost naturally, the conversation shifted. People began bringing up the past, specifically his relationship with Lori Harvey. It wasn't forced or out of place. It emerged in comments, tweets, and discussions that subtly moved from "look at his success" to "remember when," and once that shift happened, the tone changed entirely. Now, it wasn't just about his success anymore. It became about how that success connects to everything that came before it. Their relationship had always been one people paid attention to. It wasn't just about two individuals. It was about how they looked together, how they moved, and what they represented to the public. And when it ended, it didn't fade quietly. It stayed in people's minds, becoming one of those stories that resurfaces whenever either person reaches a new milestone. So when Michael began trending again for something positive, it didn't take long for Lori's name to re-enter the conversation. At first, it was subtle, just a few comments here and there. But then it grew. People started comparing timelines, outcomes, and personal growth. Some framed it as a "look at him now" narrative. Others pushed back, defending Lori and arguing that people were reading too much into something that already belonged in the past. Regardless of perspective, one thing became clear. The internet had turned a private history into a public narrative once again. Then came the moment that truly pulled people in: Lori Harvey's reaction. Or more accurately, what people believed was her reaction. Because in situations like this, reactions don't always come in the form of clear statements. Sometimes they appear as a post, a story, or even silence. And that's where things become complicated. When someone is constantly being watched, even the smallest action can be interpreted in countless ways. People began analyzing everything: the timing of her posts, the tone of her content, even the absence of certain things. From those details, they constructed their own conclusions. Some believed she was completely unbothered, simply living her life without paying attention to the noise. Others felt there were subtle hints, small signals suggesting something deeper. But the truth is, no one really knew. They were interpreting what they saw, or what they thought they saw. And just when it seemed like the focus had settled on Lori, another layer emerged. Marjorie Harvey entered the conversation, and her presence shifted the tone yet again. Now, it wasn't just about a past relationship. It became about family, support, and how those close to a situation respond. Sometimes indirectly. Once again, people analyzed everything. Was her reaction supportive, neutral, intentional, or simply taken out of context? These questions added even more complexity to an already layered situation. Because when family becomes part of the narrative, even subtly, it makes everything feel more personal, more nuanced, more real. As all of this unfolded, something interesting happened. The internet didn't just discuss the moment. It began shaping it into a story. Not just a moment, but a full narrative with sides, outcomes, and conclusions created by the audience itself. Some framed it as a who-won situation, comparing success, timing, and public perception. Others rejected that idea entirely, arguing that life doesn't work that way, that people grow and move on differently, and not everything needs to be turned into a competition. But even those who disagreed couldn't fully escape the narrative. Once a story like this begins forming, it spreads quickly across posts, videos, and discussions that reach millions. Before long, it becomes part of how people understand the situation, whether it's accurate or not. Meanwhile, Michael B. Jordan remained focused on his moment, and that in itself became part of the story. While conversations swirled around him, filled with speculation and analysis, he didn't step into the noise. He didn't pause to correct every assumption or respond to every headline. Instead, he kept moving forward, project by project, appearance by appearance. He stayed aligned with his path, almost as if the surrounding chaos existed on a completely different frequency. That kind of focus doesn't go unnoticed, especially in an era where public figures are often pulled into every conversation tied to their name. For many watching, his ability to maintain that level of discipline became something to admire. It suggested growth, not just professionally but personally. There's a difference between reacting to everything and choosing what deserves your energy. And in his case, the choice seemed clear. Protect the moment, protect the work, and protect the direction. It also highlighted something deeper about evolving in the public eye. Early in a career, it's easy to get caught up in perception, to feel the need to address everything, clarify everything, and control every narrative. But with time comes a different kind of confidence. The understanding that not every rumor requires a response. That silence, when paired with consistent action, can speak louder than any statement. Your work, your presence, and your forward motion can ultimately redefine how you're seen. What made his approach stand out even more was the contrast around him. While conversations were filled with emotion, interpretation, and speculation, he didn't engage with that process. He didn't amplify it. He allowed it to exist without letting it define him. In doing so, he created a separation between personal history and present success, a boundary that many public figures struggle to maintain. For fans, that separation became symbolic. It showed that growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's choosing focus when distraction is at its peak. Sometimes it's understanding that your current chapter deserves your full attention, regardless of narratives trying to pull you backward. There's also a level of emotional discipline in that choice. Ignoring noise doesn't mean you don't hear it. It means you've decided it doesn't deserve control over your direction. In a space where attention is currency, refusing to engage with certain narratives can be a powerful statement. It shifts the focus back to what actually matters: the work, the progress, the momentum. And that's why his focus became part of the story, not because it was dramatic, but because it was intentional. In a culture that often rewards reaction, he leaned into consistency. In a moment that could have invited distraction, he chose clarity. For many watching, that felt refreshing. It reframed the conversation and reminded audiences that while speculation may dominate timelines temporarily, it doesn't have to dictate someone's path. That it's possible to exist in the spotlight without being consumed by it. And that sometimes the most powerful response isn't a statement, it's continued growth. Still, that didn't stop the conversation from evolving. Because in a world where everything feels connected, it's difficult to separate one part of a story from another. People kept revisiting past moments, reinterpreting them through new lenses. And with each revisit, the narrative shifted slightly, adding new layers, new perspectives, new questions. At its core, this situation isn't just about reactions. It's about perception, about how people interpret success after a relationship ends, how they connect past and present in ways that feel meaningful, even if they aren't entirely accurate. And most importantly, it's about how quickly those perceptions spread and become something larger than the original moment. The reality is, none of the people involved are telling the story the way the internet is. They're living their lives, making choices, moving forward, and focusing on their own paths. But the internet takes those movements and reshapes them into something else, something more dramatic, more connected, more intense. And once that happens, separating reality from interpretation becomes increasingly difficult. As the conversation continues, one thing becomes clearer with every passing moment. This was never just about a single achievement. It was about everything surrounding it, the history, the reactions, the interpretations, and the way people connect dots that may or may not actually be connected. That's what keeps people engaged, not just the facts, but the possibilities. Maybe Lori Harvey's actions meant nothing at all. Maybe they were simply everyday moments that happened to be viewed under a magnifying glass. Maybe Marjorie Harvey's presence was just that, a presence, without deeper meaning. Or maybe there are layers that only the people involved truly understand. From the outside, it's impossible to know for sure. But that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the story alive. As long as there are unanswered questions, people will keep asking them. As long as there are multiple interpretations, people will continue debating them. And as long as moments like this exist, the line between personal life and public narrative will continue to blur. In the end, what began as a celebration evolved into something far more complex, a mix of success, history, perception, and reaction unfolding all at once. And while headlines may focus on who reacted and how, the deeper story lies in how those reactions are interpreted, and what those interpretations reveal about how we view relationships, growth, and moving on. Now, the focus shifts again, not just to what has already happened, but to what comes next. Will the conversation fade? Or will it evolve into something even bigger? Will new moments spark new interpretations? Or will this remain one of those stories people revisit whenever something significant happens?